As we follow the breaking news of the crashes both in Philly and in D.C., the president tonight is not letting go of his baseless claims that DEI led to that crash near Reagan National Airport.
Are you at all concerned about opining about the Army and the conduct of that aircraft when you are commander-in-chief and these are the people who reported to you and there's an investigation ongoing?
This was all caused by bad rules, regulations, and other things by the Biden administration. And when you look at the way they ran things, in fact, if you look, we hired, one of the first things I told them to do is to get talented people in those beautiful towers overlooking runways. You better get them in there fast because we don't have people there that are qualified.
Trump's blame game may be a way for him to distract from the other very serious questions about his own actions, from the absence of a named FAA administrator at the time of the crash to his firings of the TSA chief and Aviation Safety Committee. But the villainizing and politicizing of diversity has sparked a conversation in this country. Here is a provocative take from podcast host Van Lathan.
The term DEI right now has become the worst slur in American history. It's worse than anyone. The term DEI, or DEI hire, is not just being used to undermine the qualifications, capability, and the readiness of Black people and women and other people in all of these different sectors. It's not just minimizing them. DEI is placing the blame of all of society's ills at the feet of these people.
It's not just about meritocracy, really, because it sounds like, based on what a lot of these folks are saying, the idea that there are not enough white people in certain roles is the problem, according to some of these folks pushing this.
Yeah, look, this is a completely bad faith effort on the part of the Trump administration and Trump's allies. And you know they don't care about qualifications because you can just look at the qualifications of the white people who Donald Trump has nominated to lead departments and agencies. I mean, these are among the least qualified people that the Senate has ever considered. When you look at a guy like Pete Hegseth, who ran 2 nonprofits into the ground and had to be fired from those roles, who has, confessed to alcohol abuse and certainly has never done anything close to running the Department of Defense in a department of its size. When you look at Tulsi Gabbard, who, is literally someone who many people, I think, accurately describe as a national security threat, now poised to become the director of national intelligence. When you look at a guy like RFK, who's supposed to be over public health in this country, but doesn't believe in science and pushes dangerous conspiracy theories.
And doesn't know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid,
yeah,
according to his confirmation hearing. Pete, I don't understand why, well, actually I do. I get it. It's a distraction. It's a way to get us talking about it. But I also want to just highlight for a second the human consequences of this. There were 3 people aboard that Black Hawk. We don't know what happened on that aircraft. But the family of one of the people, this is our reporting at CNN, it says, at the request of the family, the name of the 3rd soldier will not be released at this time, according to the Army said. Though the 3rd soldier's name is not being released at the request of her family, CNN was told she was co-piloting the Black Hawk and had about 500 flight hours. So there were 3 people on the Black Hawk. One of them was a woman. That woman's family is afraid to put her name out there because they know that she will be blamed for this crash, despite there being absolutely no evidence one way or another.
I think this is very simple. Donald Trump doesn't like the appearance of not being in control, and he doesn't like the appearance or the implication that he may have been at fault. Now, you can like that or dislike that, it doesn't matter. That is the clear analysis and why he jumps to conclusions. But I would say, and brace yourself for a sweeping generational attack, I hear every baby boomer dad that I know when I hear Donald Trump say, it's just common sense. Not speaking specifically to DEI, but any conclusion you would reach on something that happens. It's common sense. I already know what happened. I don't need an investigation. I don't need people to look into this. I know how it happened.
But he's the
And
president.
but that's
the
why
United
he's the
States.
president, is
But hang
because
on, he's
he
the president
connects
of
with
the
that
United
mentality.
States. He's got access to information I don't have access, or your dad, or your dad, or whoever's dad does not have access to the information he has access to.
So here's what I know. I know a number of people who voted for Donald Trump for the first time. They were so disgusted in what they felt was happening in the Biden administration. I talked to many of them this week. Instead of talking about the economy, I was fielding questions on whether or not the Trump administration wanted to stop commemorating Black History Month, Women's History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month.
This is the directive at a lot of the agencies, but DOD today put out a memo saying no more celebration of history months.
Or Holocaust Remembrance Day or MLK
So
Day.
I was fielding all of these questions. So when people said that they voted for Donald Trump because they were concerned about, the price of eggs and all of these type of things, because of Donald Trump's own doing, we're having to have this conversation about DEI. DEI, for many people, and I call them the woke right, it has become a stand-in for being black and unqualified. And what I would like for the Trump administration to do, Susie Wiles, I love her, never met her, want to meet her one day. I want them to ask the team, what was our message coming out of this week? And if they say that they felt as if it was successful, then we're going to have a very long 4 years.
Can I make a provocative argument here? What if Donald Trump also won because of the people who think that black people and trans people and women
Yes.
are taking things that belong to them? Isn't it possible that he actually
It was
won
a factor.
for that reason, and that they don't think that this is a messaging, change of course, but
But
this
it
is
doesn't
this is the
represent the
course.
majority of
But,
those.
but
who
they
voted.
could very well think that this is the course that they are supposed to be on.
Yes, I think this is what economic anxiety has sometimes been euphemized to refer to. That people feel like they're losing their status in society and maybe their ability to climb up the socioeconomic ladder, and the easy scapegoat is the black and brown and people and women who are taking their place, who are robbing them of their opportunities. One thing I want to add to this discussion, besides the career effects on people of color and women and other groups, other underrepresented groups in government, among other positions, who may suffer because of the comments that Trump made about DEI causing these plane crashes, is that Trump surrounds himself with lackeys who have historically been shown that they are motivated to sort of backfill and retrofit evidence to fit whatever his predetermined conclusion is. So if we want to prevent tragedies like this from happening again, I would not trust whatever investigation they put together, because Trump has already determined that the cause of this problem is DEI. If there's something else that's lurking here that could put people at risk again, we may not find out.
I actually do. I've talked to a lot of aviation experts this week. I have confidence in the NTSB. That is a gold standard agency in this country, and honestly in the entire world of aviation. But I mean, to her point, I think there are questions about whether this is going to be a witch hunt for the evidence to support this claim. They are going to be hunting down the people who fit the DEI narrative in order to prove, he was right all along.
I think I'm alone in this group. I think I'm kind of afraid to be alone in this group. I surveyed these people. I focus grouped them. And they are really, really tired of being accused of either racism or sexism because they voted for Donald Trump. And it's one of the reasons why so many of them did. I sat on this stage with you and got chewed out when I suggested there's a better language to reach out to voters, that the Harris campaign is missing what they're looking for. I say the same thing here. Americans just want to be Americans, not hyphenated Americans, not female Americans, black Americans, Jewish Americans. They just want to be Americans.
How do you think it makes people feel, black people, women, any person who has immutable characteristics about themselves, to be told every time that something happens that because they exist in a particular role, it is their fault.
And
How does it make them feel?
How does it make people feel when they're told that they're a racist?
No, I mean, answer,
But this is-
but answer my question.
I am, because these are predetermined considerations.
But no.
You were going
You're
to
assuming, you're telling me I'm
Do you
calling.
want an answer?
Well, you're not answering my question. You're telling
Yes,
me.
I'm trying to.
You were
No, you're
telling
not.
me
Actually,
that.
your response is in bad faith. I mean, what she is saying is something you're not responding to, because it doesn't address why Donald Trump immediately went to DEI as an explanation without any evidence whatsoever for what looks to be an inexcusable and certainly a very devastating and tragic plane and helicopter crash a couple of days ago. And instead, you pivot to talking about how terrible it is that some people who voted for Donald Trump are being called racist and sexist. You're refusing
It's
to
also
grapple
an
with the
option
central
for
issue.
Trump.
Understanding.
Frank, it's an
because-
option.
Hold on.
Frank, it's an
because
option
my
for Trump.
understanding is of the voter.
Frank,
That is what I do.
it is
I'm
an
opposed-
option
What about
for
the immorality
Hold on.
and the incompetence
Frank,
of
it's an
blaming
option for
DEI
Donald
for what
Trump.
happened?
You guys
to-
can all jump on me, that's fine.
No, I'm not jumping on you. I'm trying to have a conversation with you, okay? Look, it is an option for Donald Trump to respect his voters and not scapegoat race in a situation like that. He chooses not to every time. Why?
He is saying, and I do not defend him, and I've not defended him on this program, because there are things that are more important than Republican and Democrat, and it's why some people lost primaries, and some people are not members of Congress anymore. I'm trying to tell you the truth.
Well, look, you don't have to listen. I just
Hold
won
on,
my
Javier, hold
primary.
on,
You
let me
don't have to lecture
Javier,
me.
hold on,
Let me
Javier, let me
finish.
let him
I mean,
finish.
if you're gonna throw shots, I'm just.
Javier, just a second, let me let him finish.
This is why this show is such a challenge for me, because I really am, and I've been on this show and criticized him many times. I've been on this show and praised him. In the end, how do we get beyond how we look? How do we get beyond how we sound? Because in the end, we all have a right to a point of view. I respect yours, regardless.
Yeah, I just
of
don't respect the gaslighting and the bad faith conversation.
I
That's
also
all.
think you
So-
cannot talk about getting beyond all of those things, race, hyphens, whatever it is, when at the highest offices of the land, you have someone saying, because there is diversity, there is a lack of merit, there is a lack of quality, there is a lack of experience. That is a racist view, that people who have characteristics that they cannot change about them, that don't tell you anything about their intellect, about their experience, are by definition not experienced. Do you understand that?
I do, because I listen to this, I hear this, and I internalize it. And for those who feel like they're being marginalized, we have to do more. I agree with you.
It's not even just about being marginalized, it's just
But
about recognizing
I
that.
just said I agree with you.
I know, I'm saying, but look, I'm
You're
not
not
trying to
gonna
use
hear me.
I'm not trying to use academic language to talk about this. I'm just saying that there are people, look, a couple days ago, there was a Harvard-educated Olympic track star was told that she wasn't qualified to have gone to Harvard, that she was basically a DEI admit to Harvard. I mean, that's just from a human
Yes, that's
perspective.
wrong.
That is
We
wrong.
all agree that's
Right?
wrong.
Can I ask you a question
We
about
all
this?
agree with that, but there's nothing I can say to you on this panel, for any of you, that's gonna satisfy
No.
you.
May I ask you a question about
And that's
this?
the problem.
So you're saying Americans felt alienated by the way Democrats talked about
And-
some of these things.
Yes,
Okay, but do you think that this is the antidote? I think that's the question here. I mean, you can be critical of terms that Democrats have used, but it's not clear to me how this approach is better. In fact, it seems exponentially worse to be scapegoating, whether it's hyphenated Americans or otherwise, any group of Americans for this tragedy, to be purging government data from websites under the guise of DEI and rooting out wokeness. I guess that's where I think there's a bit of a disconnect here. It's
I
like,
agree with you.
okay,
I agree with you. And you're probably surprised. That's the goal in all of this. How do we get to the point when you're judged by our merit, when you're judged by our performance? I've had two experiences. Number one is my house almost burned down in Brentwood. I wasn't even there to see it. And I want the best people possible to be on the front lines fighting that fire. I landed 55 minutes before this plane landed. I could have been on it. So I feel it. I hear this and I get it. And you're correct and you're correct. The question is, do we beat up on it and yell about it and complain, or do we try to get a solution? Do we try to get beyond it? And the problem is, there's nothing I can say that's going to convince you.
But in order for us to get beyond it, Donald Trump and the woke right, they have to stop talking
Yes.
about it. The reason that we're talking about it is because it was a deliberate decision that the Trump administration made. I would much rather be talking about the economy and some of the other things that I know that the Donald Trump administration is going to do, but we're not in the now second week of the Trump administration. We are ending it talking about DEI because this was a decision that they made.
And to be clear, our discussion of it is not out of nowhere. It's not something we created out of whole cloth. It doesn't mean that we're harping on something that the American people would rather we not talk about. It is responding directly to something that happened.
And the only person who to your point, injected race into this is Donald Trump. We could be having a very normal investigation into a national tragedy, comforting these families. But this is the conversation that not only do they want to have, but they are making it the only conversation around what happened here. And that is not just wrong from a moral perspective, but it's also a missed opportunity to keep Americans safe.
Well, both the president and Secretary Hegseth, I believe, said in that press conference in the briefing room that elevation was probably the issue here. It seems to be the case with the helicopter. And to your point, I mean, they were likely right in the moment, immediately after. And here it has been completely hijacked by something else. I do think, though...
That's just a nice use of the passive
Can I
tense.
just say one thing about that, just because we just had a whole conversation about this crash. The elevation is a fact, right? They were at the wrong elevation. The question is, and what the investigation will find out, is what actually caused that to happen. And yes, he did say, oh, the elevation is the problem, but then he said it's because of DEI and because of a lack of standards as a result of diversity initiatives. So Trump is diagnosing the problem by saying that the blame is actually on this thing that we don't know had anything at all to do with it.
Right, which is the part where I said then he hijacked the point that he was trying to make about the elevation. But, Frank, you're the master of language, so you probably have a better way of articulating this than I do. The conversation that I do think needs to be taking place in this country, and unfortunately Donald Trump uses DEI as the euphemism for it, is we have lowered standards across the board. We have lowered standards across the board in the name of entertainment, in the name of whatever, and it's happening. It's happening in education, it's happening in sports, it's happening in the workplace, and that is a conversation that I think is legitimate and needs to be had.
All right,
That's
everyone.
exactly what the public says.
Thank you very much for that very interesting and important conversation. We have much more on our breaking news out of Philadelphia, where a